it's crazy, but it's
You're watching Channel Z, the world's leading zombie apocalypse channel, broadcasting live from Studio Z.
Makes me act the way I do.
Welcome to Undead Live, reporting from the front lines of the zombie apocalypse. We have your back morning, noon, or night, whether you're dead, undead, recently deceased, or fully alive. We have the apocalypse covered. I'm Athena Actipus.
And I'm Dave Lundberg-Kenrick.
And we are really excited to have a show today about lots of brains getting entrained.
We did. Speaking of entrainment, I do just want to say, since this is a thing that's being filmed at ASU, and I'm here representing the department, I think it's really important that throughout today and going forward with Zombified, while we have open conversations, we're careful about how we have those conversations. And we make sure we do it in a way that represents the values of the university. So,
Well, I think that it's great to have a place for open and, friendly conversations, even if we disagree about some things, a place to have, different views at the table where we can, have an open dialogue and try to really understand where each other are coming from.
yeah, I think that's a good
Yeah,
plan.
absolutely. Great. Well, we have some special guests today where I think we're going to bring them right in. We have Dr. Jessica Phillips-Silver, who is a music neuroscience scholar, a musician herself, a speaker, and an artistic creator. And along with Jessica, we have Dante Pope, who is himself a musical director as well, a solo artist with roots in Chicago-based blues, gospel, jazz, and soul music. Jessica and Dante, it's so great to have you both with us.
Thank you.
Wow, you guys have quite a production setup there. Jessica, can you introduce yourself for everyone and tell us what's going on in the background?
Yes, well, thank you very much, both of you, for having us on today. I'm Dr. Jessica. I'm accompanied by my good friend and colleague and zombie in crime, Dante Pope. And what we have going on today is a presentation, a performance of some of our own original music from a show that we've created together that's all about rhythm and the brain. It deals with entrainment and cooperation and empowerment. And we're really looking forward to sharing a few pieces of that show with you. And we are streaming from the Carriage House at 7 Drum City in Washington, D.C.
Wonderful. Dante.
Hello, I'm Dante Pope from Chicago. I've been here in DC for about 15 years, and I think Dr. Jessica said it all. So I'm looking forward to getting to the music and having this conversation around rhythm.
Wonderful. Well, Jessica, we'll give you the floor and we'll look forward to hearing your beats and getting entrained with you.
Thank you. So we're going to play a few songs for you all. We're going to invite you to join in with us. And I think the one thing that I just want to say about, the reason that we created this show called Finding Rhythm, A Journey Through the Musical Brain is really to teach young and old brains about the evolutionary origins of human music, why we evolved to have rhythm, why rhythm is such a powerful force in shaping brain development, as well as creating individual empowerment and at the same time a sense of community connection and cooperation. There's some questions that might come up as we go through. But to begin, I'm just going to turn it over to Dante, who's also known as Father Rhythm. And he's going to be sharing with you, we're going to be starting off in the location of what we call the original rhythm. So the land of Africa, where human music really began. And he's going to be taking us through a traditional African song. It's a song from West Africa of the Mandinka people. And you'll hear us sing the lyrics, but just so that you know the essence of the meaning of the song is it's a morning song that children learn to greet their parents, their elders, to honor their origins and to respect where they come from. You might also hear him turn it into a more familiar melody at some point.
Yeah, so as Dr. Jessica said, Somale is the name of the song. So for everyone that's watching, if you could repeat after me, Soma,
Soma.
Soma.
lay,
Lay.
Somale.
Somale.
Awesome. So Somale, again, as Dr. Jessica said, is a song that we use to honor our ancestors and our elders. And I think what's cool about the music, and talking about my history as a preacher's kid, coming from Chicago and really starting in the church, a lot of this music was always ceremonial. While there may have been parties, there was always some type of spiritual significance to these songs. And so when we say Somale, it's also beyond just honoring your ancestors that are present, but also those who may have gone on. And I think in the spirit of what we're doing, all of us on this production or as participants have been impacted by someone, whether it be a parent, an aunt, an uncle, a professor, someone's theories. And so to all of them, we say Somale. And so this song is a song that traditionally does not have any rhythm or any type of instrumentation at all. On our project that we recorded this song, we kind of flipped it and used an instrument called the kora, which is a 21 string instrument, would almost be, I guess, compared to a harp. And the kora is a calabash gourd that's pretty much everything on the inside is taken out. And you have 21 strings, and those strings are what you use to play. Now, what's significant about the kora is that the kora is what griots, who were the musicians in Africa, used to tell the history. Most of the history in Africa was never written down. It was passed on through the music and by mouth versus reading it. And what's cool about that instrument as well is that it is the mother of the banjo. And so as we're talking about rhythms and transitions, when Africans were brought to the US and the Caribbean and Latin America, at a certain time, drums were taken away. And so to be able to have the string instrument to also connect with your history, your ancestry, and your spirituality was very important. So to all of my ancestors and to my family and my friends and to all of you, in honor of you, I say Somale. You ready to sing it?
I'm ready.
All right. Somale, Imbali Sopama, Dunkaya, Kulunkaya, Somale, Ai, Somale, Imbali Sopama, Somale, Imbali Sopama, Dunkaya, Kulunkaya, Somale, Ai, Somale, Imbali Sopama. Somale, Imbali Sopama, Durunkaya, Kalunkaya, Somale, Somale, Imbali Sopama, Durunkaya, Kalunkaya, Somale, Somale, Imbali Sopama. See if you all can repeat this. Somale.
Somale.
Yeah, sounded good. Somale.
Somale.
Yeah. Somale.
Somale.
Yeah. Somale. Imbali Sopama. Kaya, Kaya, Somale. Somale. Imbali Sopama. That's something we would say here in the States could be like, when I wake up in the morning, love, and the sunlight hits my eye, and something without warning, love, weighs heavy on my mind. Samfest when I look at you, and your rhythms that are so frightening.
Scary.
Oh, just one look at you, yeah, and I know it's gonna be. Y'all can sing it. A lovely, lovely day, lovely day, a lovely day, lovely day, lovely day, lovely day, a lovely day, 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 so my lady, 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 bali sa pama, kaya, so my lady, so my lady.
Wow. What amazing vibes you guys just brought to us in the studio. That was just amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you for singing
I really
along.
love you.
So tell us a little bit about what you have coming up next for us, Jessica.
Yeah, so Dante and I met over 10 years ago
Yeah,
here
a
in
long
Washington,
time
D.C. through music, through the music community. And we are both in the business of growing fresh brains. Dante has been a performing artist, traveling the world, but also mentoring and educating children here across DC and the DMV area. He's an advocate. He's worked in the schools, he's worked on the Hill, and I, at the same time, have been in the science lab researching the role of rhythm in brain development in children, and looking at various other angles of that, music-specific brain disorders and the brain circuitry that's specific to musical rhythm and entrainment. And so this next song is really, it's a single from our production, our show, Finding Rhythm. It's kind of what we consider the theme song. It's called Rhythm Grows Your Brain. And it really was created with the intention of saying specifically to children and parents and teachers in the community how much rhythm is really a powerful tool in brain growth. And of course, rhythm zombifies the brain in all of the best ways. And one way that I want you to be listening for here, and Dante is going to lead you through this in detail, but what we specifically focus on in our work together and in the show Finding Rhythm is complex rhythms, also sometimes called polyrhythms. And the definition of a polyrhythm is really two simultaneous, conflicting or contrasting subdivisions of a beat pattern. And I want you to be thinking about, first of all, I want you to be tuning your ears in and listening to see if you can identify different ways that you can clap or sing or step or move along to the beat. And Dante will be helping your ears get better trained for that as well.
Yeah, my whole goal is to mess you up, to be honest. So these rhythms, especially when we're talking about rhythms that are a part of the African diaspora, and I would even say within the States, within a lot of our musical styles, is the triplet. And so that rhythm, if we were to say it, it would be triplet, 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 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So when we hear that in jazz, we have triplet rests in there that breaks up that beat to give the space. So triplet, 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 that swing that you would typically hear on the ride cymbal. And when we're getting into Rhythm Grows Your Brain, the focused rhythm that we use for that is called the bembe. Now, the bembe is both a people from Africa, but also it is a rhythm that we use with our cowbell. No different than, like a string band where you have a fiddle player who is typically the lead of the band, a fiddle player or your guitarist. When we talk about Afro and Afro-Latin styles of music, you're going to have cowbell involved. And what the cowbell does is, it, number one, gives the drummers an idea of what we're doing. So the cowbell would almost be like a rhythmic signature or like your rhythmic DNA. So when I play the bembe, that tells me what beat would be played as a percussionist. Just to demonstrate what the bembe sounds like, it sounds like this. Now, that may have just sounded like a bunch of random beats to you. So I'm going to give you context and now say triplet on top of that while playing it. And as I'm saying the triplet rhythm or fundamental percussive rudiment, you're going to hear where I'm literally, when she says subdividing, that's when we take certain parts of a full structured rhythm and take them out. And so as you divide it, that's where we get what the youth call the sauce or the vibes. So I'll start by saying triplet, 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 triplet. Now I just did a polyrhythm using my mouth and the cowbell. You can do it too.
I cannot. No, I can't.
No, we can't. We're going to need a little more instruction, I think, if we're even going to attempt
So I'm
that.
going to divide you two, our hosts, into two different rhythms. One of you,
Oh my God.
one of you will just do one.
Athena on the 3.
Athena, okay, Athena will be on the 3.
That's our salsa expert.
Oh, okay, here we go. So my man,
I
here we
want
go.
the
So
easy one. Give me the easy one.
you got,
Got
it.
it.
So you're just gonna clap what we would say either 1, 2, 1, 2, or 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's just do 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. Keep doing that. Right? And then Athena, you're gonna do this. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and stop. Polyrhythm. You're playing that.
All right. That was good.
Yes. Now I'll demonstrate real quick on the drum set what that would sound like too. And then we're going to get into Rhythm Grows the Brain. So I'm going to play those two rhythms against each other. So check this out. Now, as the drummer, you would never play that because you're playing other people's parts. So when the drum set is involved, you're typically playing the bembe, and everything else is in response. So I'm using 4 limbs at once, and that definitely zombifies my brain. But you ready to get into the song, Jessica?
Yeah, that's right. And I don't know if you heard what Father Rhythm just said at the end there. He said, that's why you practice. So all of you out there who study and work in the area of cooperation, I want you to be thinking about what it means for individuals to allow different sides, different components of that polyrhythm to zombify their brains so that the sum of the conflicting rhythm patterns together creates the whole, which is the polyrhythm, which is the bembe. Let's go. Rhythm grows your brain.
All right. Now, when we get to a part where Dr. Jessica is clapping, feel free to join along. And what you're going to hear is I'm going to be manipulating the triplet, also insinuating other fundamental rhythms like a 16th note, 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a. I'll use 8th notes. But the cool thing about these styles is you want to lay back on these rhythms so that they all can be heard equally. So you have the tension there, but then it's just so cool. All right.
So you have tension and ease.
Tension and ease at the same time.
I also just want to point out here that Dante and I, just for fun, we decided to flip parts in this song.
Yes. Yeah. So this is Dr. Jessica's theme song for Rhythm Grows Your Brain. And in the Finding Rhythm musical, this is her feature tune on stage. So whenever we get a chance to come out there, you're going to see her in an amazing tailored suit with some awesome glasses, singing her face off. But I want to do it today. Here we go. What makes a brain cell fire electrically? How does your whole brain grow and turn out to be? Just what makes you special? Everything that you need to be. Your intelligence, your culture, your creativity. sound comes in, the movement begins. That's when you really listen. The sound comes in, the movement begins. The rhythm makes you listen. Listen to the rhythm swell. Listen, and you'll find yourself feeling, connecting, respecting the power. Rhythm grows your brain. Rhythm grows your brain. Get ready to clap, guys. Rhythm grows your brain.
It actually does.
Rhythm grows your brain. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. When we move together, the connections that we feel moves your hearts and bodies. But do you know it's really deep within our brain that the rhythm begins to sway? The sound of movement connection is growing your brain.
Hey.
The sound comes in, the movement begins. That's when you really listen. The sound comes in, the movement begins. The rhythm makes you listen. Listen to the rhythm swell. Listen, and you'll find yourself feeling, connecting, respecting the power. Rhythm grows your brain. Rhythm grows your brain. Rhythm grows your brain. Rhythm grows your brain. Yo. Rhythm grows your brain.
Wow. Amazing. Thank you so much for that. We're all just grooving here in the studio. You guys are bringing just such amazing energy in from all the way across the country.
How did that feel?
It feels great. How do you guys feel?
Yeah.
Great comments.
So I have a question.
Were you all able to feel the tension between those different ways of interpreting the beat?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like I was wondering when you play that, for me, even clapping along, it's a little difficult to just be like doing my part and not getting thrown by other people's parts. So how do you do it?
I would say for me, what you have to do, because even playing in a band in a rhythm section, everyone is playing alternate rhythms in some form. Especially within the styles that I typically play, like straight ahead jazz or funk, but especially within jazz where things are very free. You're using a form, but manipulating it. And I guess I never thought about the idea of zombification, but it's like, I guess if you're zombified, you're in a trance, somewhat fixated on something. And so what I had to learn in growing up playing in more so classical percussion ensembles with very complex rhythms is you have to kind of zone out while being present. I don't know how I do that, but it's like if I was looking at a sheet of music or if I'm thinking about an arrangement, I'm very focused on it, but muscle memory counts. So when I used to practice complex rhythms, I would use a pillow and just watch television. And I'd play the rhythm, I'd read it until I memorized it. And then after I memorized it, I would just play it without looking at it for like a whole, I would watch Family Matters or something and just play that rhythm so that then to this day, certain things that I was doing at 15, I could do without even thinking about it. And I think it's that makes it easier to respond as a musician, especially if you're playing at a high level. Having the arrangement and the fundamentals and capacity to just play it, you have to have that on your own, because when we get on stage, now it's my job to push Jessica. It's my job to elevate the arrangement, but at the same time engage the audience. And so practice is very important, but then there's like a certain level of trust where like, well, we're doing it now, so I just got to believe that it makes sense. But I saw Pamela had a cool question on there, Dr. Jessica.
Oh, yeah.
That's why I stepped up. And Pamela asked, when she hears these rhythms, can you explain what's happening to her as the sound comes in?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and it really my answer to that question really relates back to what you were just describing about your own internal process. And so, one of the things that we know about musical rhythm is that it gets in your body, right? It causes you to move. Well, so when we look at the musical brain, we're actually examining a whole circuit of brain regions that are working in concert, right? That are working together, that really involve areas from the spine going up into the brainstem and subcortical areas, including cerebellum and basal ganglia, that are absolutely critical, not just for movement action planning and movement motor patterns, but also timing and prediction. And so it's really a combination of the anticipation and timing with the anticipated motor patterns in response to that rhythm. And then that circuitry leads up, of course, through auditory cortex. And in my research, I've proposed actually an area of vestibular cortex, which is adjacent to auditory. It's posterior insula. And this is actually a very, very important aspect of not just how we feel rhythms when we move our bodies through our sense of balance and movement, our movement of our head in space and where we are against gravity. But for those of you who are interested in child development, that's absolutely critical in the early years. And it explains why babies and children need not just love, but need to be rocked and bounced and swung and all of these things. And then this circuit moves up through sensory integration areas in parietal, and then forward through motor areas, premotor and supplementary motor areas, and then into prefrontal cortex, like dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, which is where we do a lot of evaluating, right? So there's this from subcortical, right from our nervous system, right in our body, up through these different areas, feeding into these prefrontal areas that are judging, did I anticipate the beat correctly? Was I on time? Was I laid back, right? Was I rushing it? Was I in time with my ensemble members? And so there's this whole system, there's more to it than that, but that's just one way that we look at this in terms of understanding how rhythm really zombifies the brain system. And it's also important for me, I like to think about this from an evolutionary point of view too, because one thing that we find in rhythm, of course, is that you had to practice, and you do practice complex rhythms. A lot of people will find that it's easier, for example, to just clap in 2 or 4 than the triplet or an irregular metrical pattern or, a syncopated pattern. And some of the theory behind why that might be true is that 2 and 4 is a binary pattern. So we are bipedal species, right? We walk on 2 legs. And so some people think that one of the reasons that we are more easily zombified by a binary subdivision, right? Breaking down a beat into 2 or 4 beats, it actually has to do with our locomotion patterns, right? But then an expert rhythm practitioner needs to go far, far beyond that and to be able to break down in different ways and then add those layers. And that's where the ensemble really comes in. So those are a couple of points that I think are important in terms of understanding exactly how rhythm zombifies the brain and body.
Great. Dante and Jessica, what's the relationship between polyrhythms and syncopation exactly?
Well, polyrhythms specifically, the way I operationalize that is to contrasting or conflicting beat subdivision patterns. Syncopation is really more about, so what we demonstrated with the bembe was 4 against 3. So you have a binary subdivision versus a ternary subdivision, and you feel the conflict between them, but together they create this pattern that's greater than the sum of the parts. Syncopation is really about where the strong beat is and what determines how we perceive the strong beat. So for example, you would expect in a 4-beat or 8-beat pattern, you would expect the strong beat to be on the downbeat and on what we would call metrically significant beats. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. But in syncopation, what happens is you either have a loud, strong, acoustically accentuated beat on a non-metrically important beat. So for example, on the 2 or the 4, or in 1E and a 2E, you have one.
And that's only if we're dealing in Western music.
Only in Western music. No, right, that's
yeah,
right.
because if you listen to stuff that's especially like from the continent specifically, or even from certain parts of Europe, like you check out Balkan rhythms and some of that other stuff the rhythms are in 15. Mm-hmm. There's no 2 and 4 to lean on if it's in like an odd meter. So I think part of like the syncopation from a musician standpoint is understanding that there are many parts being applied, but there is always a pulse. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of gets at the strong beat part that you were talking about. So I think they're kind of one and the same, especially as a percussionist. A polyrhythm and syncopation are kind of like fused together, given I'm playing like with 4 different limbs.
But I think an important part of that is that it plays with your expectations.
For sure.
So when your brain becomes zombified and entrained to a particular pulse, right? Whatever that pulse is and however complex the breakdown of that pulse is, you're expecting a strong beat where the strong beat should be, and you're expecting soft beats in between. And what expert musicians do, especially rhythm practitioners, is they surprise you. So there might be what we call sometimes in the literature a loud silence.
Exactly.
Right. So the one comes and there's no sound there. And what happens? You end up feeling it more deeply than if it were there, because there's this element of anticipation and prediction that the brain is calculating for, and then suddenly it's silent. So we call it a loud silence.
That makes a lot of sense, that if you're expecting something and it's missing, that you can maybe feel that more viscerally than if the thing was actually present that you were expecting.
That's right.
And I can demonstrate that for you on the drum set real quick. So I'm going to play a simple, what we would call like a fundamental rock syncopated beat, right? This is what I teach all my students. Basic 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. I'm going to play it enough for it to get stuck in your brain, and then I'm going to take out certain parts, but you're still going to feel that pulse. All right, so check this out. Now back to the 1 and 3 with the kick. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. Now I'll take the snare out of the 2 and 4. And that's pretty straightforward. Now, if I were to solo using that, traditionally from how I was taught, while soloing is great to show all the ability and nuances that you have, you have an audience in front of you. The idea is to find a connection and then manipulate the expectation. So I don't need to go around the kit and do a bunch of crazy stuff. I can literally take certain parts out, and then your brain will actually do more of the work for me. All right, so check this out. It's basic groove. I'll play it for 4 more bars, and I'm gonna solo over this. Watch this. See Jessica's still going because it's dripping in her head. Now 16 notes on the hi-hat, 8 notes on the kick drum, 1 hand. That's a dotted 16ths. And on the snare, I'm doing something called ghost notes, which is used heavily in funk. So instead of just playing the 2 and 4, you add the ghost notes. It's softer than the 2 and 4. That's why they call ghost notes. All right. So having and establishing that groove within the syncopation with what was happening here, but then leaving that space in between that pulse of the 2, 4, or 1 and 3.
Awesome. Jessica and Dante, are you guys ready to talk to us maybe a little bit about go-go music and the indigenous musics of Washington, D.C.?
Yeah, that's actually the perfect segue. So why don't we let that conversation take us right into the pocket?
Yeah, so go-go music is a style of music that incorporates hip-hop, it incorporates jazz, it incorporates Afro-Latin styles, it incorporates West African styles, and then of course just about any American-born genre of music. Most of the players from some of the more popular music, like a Chuck Brown, came from more of your blues and jazz styles. There were a lot of amazing education powerhouses here, Dunbar High School, Eastern High School, and a couple other high school programs that had some very significant impacts on the music community here. Just to give a background of who's from Washington, D.C., Marvin Gaye's from Washington, D.C., he's a product of D.C. public schools. Duke Ellington is from D.C., who's a product of D.C. public schools and the father of many different nuanced styles within jazz, but has definitely made an impact from a arrangement point of view. And there are a bunch of other notable rhythm section players and solo artists that come from the city. And so foundationally, it came from people who were very talented. But then beyond that, to actually make it more accessible, because also the programs changed here, it went from playing instruments like the drum set and the guitar to literally people playing buckets. There's a group called the Junkyard Band that literally used the resources they had to play this music. And over time, the sound has changed. So while it's a genre that is very much known to either musicians who have an understanding of the style or are from this region, there are many subgenres of go-go too. But in a traditional go-go band setup, you would have a drum set, rototoms, a conga player. At this point, people running samples, a DJ potentially, a guitarist to play chords, a guitarist to play rhythm, a bass player, a horn section, a vocalist, and then your lead talker. And what the lead talker does is kind of the lead talker plays as the MC. So one of the most notable go-go performers by the name of Chuck Brown, he's called the father of go-go. He really broke out in the 1970s. There was a song called Bustin' Loose that he did for a movie starring Richard Pryor called Bustin' Loose. And that was one of the first really songs from the go-go community that got like national acclaim. And what I love about that song is it features a Afro-Cuban rhythm called Wang Wang Ko. And you'll hear that a lot in many older songs. But it's a genre of music that is percussion heavy and then everybody else is behind it versus many other styles of music, especially where you have a vocalist, your melodic instruments are the focus, your guitar, your keyboard players, not in go-go. It's all about the drums. And part of that being because when Chuck Brown formed go-go, it was around the time of the disco era. And so at that time, you got to think all these musicians were running the country doing their thing, and then the digital era comes, and DJs hit the scene, and they're taking people's money. So what Chuck Brown said was literally, what can I do as a musician to, number one, compete, but also keep the people on the dance floor? And that's how it became so percussively heavy, because imagine you end a song, but the drums never stop. So that gives the band to maybe talk and figure out, hey, well, what next song are we going to play? What are we going to do? Or just drop into any song at any point in time. So if you ever go to a go-go show, the drums will never, there's no break. The drums will never stop. So that's the purpose of having your talk leader, because they engage the crowd. It makes it very communal. So if I were to see you guys, if I were a talk leader and I'm seeing my two hosts, you just walk into the club, I don't care what song I'm doing, I'm going to yell your name out, because it's also very communal. And so with that style of music, your talk leader engages the band. It tells people what to do. It's beyond engaging the audience. If they say, hey, drummer, drop it down for me, that means I'm going to do a certain syncopation on the drums. If they say, put it in the pocket, that's a specific rhythm that I'm going to demonstrate for you. If they say, give me a socket, the socket is a different form of a pocket that goes beyond the groove that was established. But in general, this is a American-born genre of music that, in my opinion, very blatantly and openly uses all the many different styles that come from around the globe. The only American-born instrument that we have beyond the banjo is like the drum set from the percussive end, because I mean, and that's really like an amalgamation of other countries. You know, Asia really produces all the steel, so that's the cymbals that didn't come from here. And then the drum set is an amalgamation of drums that come from all over the world. The snare drum comes from both Europe and India with the tabor, and people just added snares over time. So all these pieces up here are an amalgamation of all the cultures that impacted our music. And so in go-go,
that's amazing.
Like it is very cool. So with go-go, you're getting Africa, you're getting Latin America, but then also it's blues focused, it's jazz focused. And a cool part of it is, I would say over time, people kind of went from the traditional framework, because again, they were competing with the DJ. So a lot of go-go music is placing a specific pocket over a popular song. So if you were to Google a lot of bands, you would see, oh, that's Neo's song, or that's Beyonce's song, or that's Chuck Berry's song. And they just put this specific beat to it, and it makes it a go-go song. So they are, I would say nowadays, the cool thing is people are writing a lot more original material. With Chuck Brown, because he was more jazz-centric, I mean, he was doing Moody's Mood, which is a very complex sax solo that James Moody wrote back in the day. But he put it to a go-go pocket and sang it, which would call somewhat of a vocalese or a different style of interpretation.
Amazing. Well, we can't wait to hear you guys. And maybe after you get us all in the pocket, you could tell us a little bit about the show that you have, and then we'll bring Greg on so we can all talk together.
Sure. So just to demonstrate the pocket, or one of them, you all can clap with me. You're going to do stomp, clap, stomp, stomp, clap, 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 stomp, clap, stomp, clap, and stop. Awesome. So I'll play it on the drum set for you real quick.
That's also syncopation.
Now, what typically starts off a song, if nothing has happened yet, there's a rhythm that we call chop, chop, barbecue. And that's more of a vocal percussive way to explain what happens here. So it's snare, snare, tom, tom, kick. All right? So that starts off the pocket. Clap, that also tied very much to your diasporic feels is there's a famous song that Duke Ellington recorded called "Don't Mean a Thing If It Ain't Got That Swing." Do-wop, 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 do-wop. And it's the same in go-go. The triplet is the fundamental part of it. And that's what helps the drummer give the feel. Because this could be insinuated as a 16th. But it's triplet, 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 triplet. And that gives the swing to it. So that is a traditional go-go pocket. So again, stomp, clap, stomp, clap, stomp, clap, stomp, clap, stomp, clap, stomp, clap, and stop. You want to do that song now? Is that what we're gonna do?
Let's do that song now. So you're going to join us with that pocket. Now that you've got Zombified by the Pocket. So now we're going to sing for you the song, the single from our show, Finding Rhythm, called Soul Beat Connection. And this is the song that Father Rhythm, that really features the role of Father Rhythm in this show. And he teaches the children the pocket. He gets everybody entrained with it. They're going to be playing buckets on stage as a nod to and honor of the official music of Washington, D.C. And so this is Soul Beat Connection with Father Rhythm.
And I'll be acting as both. This is typically not the case, but I'll be both the talker and vocalist in this song. Typically, you have a talker who's talking and a vocalist who's just focused on singing, and that's a conversation within itself. But I'm going to be both today. So here we go. Cut this up a little bit. Come on, go back. There we go. All right, we can clap like this on 2 and 4. Come on and move. Get up and feel the groove. You feel the beat? Yeah. Come on. Hey, I know it's time to show. And this is how the story goes. You got the heartbeat of Mother Dance. She knew with you when she took you by the hand. But little did you know she was making future plans. We can find connection. In Africa, the beat began. And then we'll travel around the world to the Caribbean. Latin America, the coolest place where they win. This is the songs of connection. Repeat after beat. Everybody say soul. Beat.
Soul.
Connection.
Beat.
Hey.
Connection.
Come on, say soul.
Soul.
Connection.
Beat.
Hey.
Connection.
Yeah, I hear you, everybody. Keep it going. Listen. Up. The rhythm started as a seed in the DC, gave people what they need. Around the city, giving power to the voice they plead. Come on and find connection. Jessica, I'm giving soul to you. You know that you remember how to go the way into a movement so that you can take the moment to. We love to find connection. Come on, everybody, soul.
Beat. Connection.
Come on, say soul.
Beat.
Hey.
Connection.
Come on, 1, 2, 3, 4. Give me that beat. Say stomp, clap, stomp,
Stomp.
clap, stomp, clap, stomp, clap, stomp, clap, stomp, clap, stomp. Everybody say bam, bam. Everybody say bam, bam. Zombified rhythm. Zombified rhythm. Zombified sound effects. Zombified rhythm. Hey, it's your brain. Oh, say soul.
Beat. Connection.
Come on, say soul.
Beat.
That's right, guys.
Connection.
pocket, everybody. Soul connection. Whoa, whoa, come on, say soul connection. I hear you there.
Connection.
Whoa, it's a kid's go-go.
That was fun.
That was amazing. Thank you guys so much for that. So you have a show that's about to go live to the world at the Kennedy Center doing exactly this, right?
Yes.
That's right. So this is you've heard a few pieces from Finding Rhythm, A Journey Through the Musical Brain. It's being co-presented by Washington Performing Arts and the Kennedy Center. It's going to debut next weekend at the Kennedy Center Family Theater.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Well, I think without further ado, we should bring Greg Bryant on to chat with all of us. Greg is a professor and the chair of the Department of Communication at UCLA. And Greg has studied many topics, including the evolution of entrainment and laughter. And he's here to chat with us today. I believe you're coming live from your sound studio, right, Greg?
Yep, that is right. My office studio in LA.
Excellent.
How are you doing? Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you here, Greg. Let's get a round of applause for Greg.
Way to put me after the interesting people.
So, Greg, you have worked on the question of entrainment. Were you entrained by this past 45 minutes of go and getting in the pocket?
Yeah, well, one thing I was thinking about a bunch of stuff while I was watching this, and one was one of my favorite papers about rhythm and entrainment is Jessica's paper with look how infants will entrain to music based on the way they're moved to it, right? And Jessica can explain a lot better than me, but babies that are bounced to a certain way to an ambiguous beat are then prefer that later. I love that study so much. And that really is what I was thinking of when I was watching, but partially because the visual information was actually not on, and I found myself having to look away in order to actually get into the sound because the visual information was delayed because of the Zoom world we're in. And so that was affecting the feeling of entrainment actually because of the visual information being off. And then it reminded me of the videos or the phenomenon of how cockatoos will actually entrain to beats, right? Snowball is a famous example of a cockatoo, and that you can find on YouTube very easily. And Snowball will nod his, I think it's a boy, nod his head to beats. But if you are dancing in front of him and you're off the beat, he will look away, and he doesn't want to look at you if you're off. And I felt like Snowball watching the video where the clapping was off from the sound. I need to look
Sorry.
I've had that experience at many a dance club.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, for many reasons, I'm sure. Yeah.
Greg, so what do you want to share with us today about entrainment and zombification?
Well, I guess the one component I would bring in, it would be maybe a different angle than what you guys have already described, since my one paper on entrainment is with you two, so with Jessica. So I'm not sure what else I would say, but I've been studying laughter for quite a while, and including a paper that I have with Athena, and I'm interested in laughter and conversation, and one thing that I've discovered is that there is a relationship between conversational rhythm and laughter. In a study looking at how speech rates converge over time in a conversation between strangers, you put people in the lab and have them talk in triads for like 10 minutes. And then we measured to how much their speech rate became more similar over time. And so it's not the kind of entrainment that you notice with an isochronous rhythm or other kinds of more obvious musical rhythms, but our speech rates actually do become more similar, and it's a form of entrainment that we're locking into the production of another person, and it's affecting our production. And what we found, kind of surprisingly, was that the more the people laughed together, then the more they tended to actually converge in their speech rates. So laughter, which is probably indexing something about breathing at one level, because breathing for speech is at a different level, it's very slow, but there can be other sort of hierarchically organized rhythms, and laughter is on a different one that could actually have downstream consequences for slower rhythms, like the conversational rhythms that we engage in. And then that seems to relate to cooperation. It's in complex ways, but the more that people co-laugh together, the more they move together, and the more that they're more likely they are to behave friendly in a behavioral economic game. And so it's a manipulative strategy to laugh and engage somebody and get them to be more in your conversational rhythmic zone. And then it can also potentially manipulate people emotionally. You induce positive affect, which might cause them to then in turn behave more favorably towards you.
Or maybe you're all just friends and having a good time.
Maybe, but I mean, there's lots of different contexts where that could unfold. But I mean, definitely, we like to sort of socially massage one another by our laughter, and then that's also sort of allowing yourself to be zombified for mutual benefit. And I have a recent paper that came out with my colleague Rick Dale and others, and we looked at triadic synchrony. So when three people are in a conversation, how their bodies move together. And so using software where you can look really precisely at how it's basically looking at pixel movement that's associated with the bodies of the speakers. And we found that the more people co-laughed, the more they were synchronizing as a triad. So that kind of laughter conversational synchrony phenomenon happens more than just the dyadic interaction. It could potentially happen in very large group interactions. And the ways that we laugh when we're friendly are detectable very easily across cultures. And so there could be something about having a chorus of laughter that is indexing your relationship status and could be broadcast out in the world to signal to others something about your affiliation with the other people you're laughing with. So again, it's another maybe mutual benefit of allowing zombification, in a two-way or three-way interaction.
Great.
Wow.
Thank you so much, Greg. Thanks for sharing your brains with us. Would you stick on with us for a minute, and we'll bring Jake on as well. Jake Patten. Jake is a lecturer at the College of Health Solutions at ASU. Jake.
Hello. Stina and Dave. Oh, sorry. We were just going to say you guys look great. One of you has an amazing beard. I won't say who. I don't want to make the other one feel bad. But and I know this looks like a trash bag. It's actually painted rubber. Just so I'm doing some other experiments, some cool zombie experiments. I don't want the fluids to leak out. Anyway, if you see anything in the back there, just
it looks like whatever it is, you're gonna whip it off to reveal some evil invention. Is what it most looks like. So
not on this call. I have a call with the DoD in like a hard 45.
All right,
so we're gonna.
Yeah,
but not for this. But yeah.
Jake, so what are you going to talk with us today about, Jake?
So it has a little bit to do, I think, with what Greg and Jessica have worked on. It's not exactly entrainment, but it's getting close. In fact, while I'm listening to you guys talk, I think it might be interesting to look at the actual recurrence. It's called recurrence in a song, and how that can pertain to entrainment. So essentially what this is you can do recurrence analysis with I'm sure you know about this, Greg, with any data set. What it looks at is if a number is reoccurring at any time in the data set. If you think about it in terms of a song, a complete 100% recurrence is just somebody playing an A note over and over and over and over and over again on a piano, which would be not a song. That's just, I don't know. You walk into, Guitar Center, that's what you hear. is just one person like playing the same note over and over. So you can also think about something that has no recurrence, which is just chaos. And that's not really going to sound much like a song either. There's nothing going on. There's no coming back to the same note. We know that we come back to the same note. So human songs tend to reoccur. I mean, that's probably not crazy to think about. There is some repetition. There's repetition of structure in the song, repetition of chorus, repetition of verse, things like that. But the repetition rate is somewhere between, for different songs, 20% and 30%. And this is going to get cool when I tell you that birds who sing songs also tend to recur around 20 and 30%. And we know that this isn't just something that accidentally happens, because we can look at birds who are not making calls. They're just making, or they're making calls rather, not songs. Those are much more recurrent, 50, 60%. There are also birds who have something that's similar to an aphasia, and they're also upwards of 70 and 80% recurrence. So specifically songs for both humans and birds are around 20 to 30%, which is interesting. It seems to be, go ahead, sorry.
What do you mean sort of is the difference between a call and a song for a bird?
So yeah, that's a fantastic. So there's not a hard and fast rule about a difference between a call and a song, but definitely a song. There's one that's moving around TikTok right now, which is, I think it's a European starling that has a song that is Barbie Girl. Like its call is just, and then it does some other stuff, but it's absolutely Barbie Girl. And that's a song. A call tends to be something that's just like, like it's just one quick thing that repeats over and over. And a song tends to have length.
Are they functionally different? Like, is one for mating and one for territory or anything like that?
Yes. Yeah. So it's usually mating songs. Some birds don't sing songs at all. Some have just mating calls, but they do have a functional difference, or they tend to, as far as these have been researched. A lot of the songs, the longer things, are for more deeper social structures, like mating and stuff like that. Calls tend to be like a territorial call, an alarm call, or something like that. But again, some birds don't have songs, so everything they have is a call.
Interesting.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Yeah.
Do you think that song is more about identifying the quality, so the variation across individuals is important, whereas calls are more functioning on a different level? They're not evaluated for quality. They just have some particular kind of function of inducing a behavior, and that the variation.
Yeah. So not being a bird researcher, but more being a music researcher, I do tend to think that you're right. And the birds that have the HVC lesions, which is what leads to like bird aphasia, they tend to be, they can make some calls, but they cannot make songs.
Right.
A lot of the calls, let's just go completely off the rails with a speculation here, but there's a lot of timbre variation in calls. And this is speculation in birds. This is not speculation in humans and animals. We've done some research on this, but animals tend to vary their timbre for alarm calls. If it's something that's scary, it's a lot more dissonant, and if it's like a mating type thing, it's really like ooh, soft and harmonic. So those birds can choose.
Run,
yeah. You want to sound soft, and yeah. So I do think that I think it seems like variation among the singers to show off how, I don't know, not really macho, but how good of a musician they are. But what's interesting about this is it seems like for at least humans and birds, and that's all we've looked at so far, there is there is something where you're riding the edge of chaos and predictability, and that's where a song is. You don't want something that's too predictable, like songs that children might learn. The Old MacDonald type song. It's not something that's really gonna like draw us in, and something that's too unpredictable, like stuff that John Cage writes. Like, I'm not gonna listen to that on my iPod. Yeah. It's interesting, but it's not a bop, like.
But as you get more into music, does the stuff that seems chaotic become more predictable?
Yeah, so that's something we're looking at right now. Sorry, go ahead, finish that thought, because
Oh no, I was just going to actually throw this out to all of you guys because I feel like this crosses some of the themes.
Yeah, but let's hear from you first,
Yeah,
Jake.
go ahead, Jake.
So that's exactly what we're looking at right now, Dave, is like the more experience you have, where does your line for chaos actually lie? And it is true that songs that are made for mass consumption tend to be more recurrent than songs that are not really made for mass consumption. One of the things that I've just started looking at is the difference between the first album from a group that takes off really well and the second or third albums that they put more like work into. They've become better musicians. I'm thinking specifically here about the Beatles. The first couple albums are hot take. I don't like them. But as they became more adept musicians, I think things became a lot more interesting. And from the data, they're also less recurrent. So yes, as far as the structure musically, frequency-wise, it does seem like that's true.
Greg?
Well, I was thinking, I mean, when you think about like songwriting and then and how to engage listeners in certain ways, then the chaos is important. But then it seems like in other cases, like in techno music or other electronic music, where it's super minimalist, and I mean almost sometimes just one click of a percussive element and a bass doing the same thing over for 20 minutes, and people just get into a trance. And so there's something about the simplistic, minimalist, loud music in an environment with a bunch of other people that I think can engage as well. And so that's an interesting sort of exception to, I think what you're saying is right. It's just, but there are ways to get people to move together with almost no stimulus other than a rhythm.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thanks.
Which is pretty interesting to watch a whole group of people just doing that to something really simple.
I agree.
Jessica, Dante, do you have thoughts on this?
I do. I guess as a producer, I can't say that anything is simple. So to hear that term when it comes to how music work is interesting. I do think there's something to also be said for the concept of sampling, where, case in point, in a lot of pop music, there is a formula. And so in many cases, I may take a sample from a Bruce Springsteen song, like a notable guitar line or piano line that somehow connects with you, and then throw that on top of some 808s and a bass line. And while the music isn't simple, the process was. But that it does have an impact on how people fall in line with it, even just, as a hip hop fan, noticing that in many genres of music that typically would steer away from urban music and country music and other styles, now they're using sample beats, so just like seeing nuances like that, like there is some complexity to the music, but what I'm seeing is on the industry side, people are using what they know is going to get them those streams, and what would definitely get the popular notice through sampling, but as well using, for whatever reason, I don't know the science behind it, but using 808s, using glitch clips, and then like on the other side of that, you have like this whole lo-fi movement where it may just be some rain and like a clave and somebody just repeating the same thing, but for some reason it's catchy. But this is an interesting conversation. I'm typically having this talk with like other producers on why people need to do more with the music. But it's cool to hear the science behind how that simplicity works. Like maybe record labels are consulting you guys, and that's why they're making millions of dollars. You know?
Any final thoughts for us, Jessica?
Well, I'm really enjoying everybody's perspectives. And I think, one of the things that Dante and I have been talking about a lot, because we're creating, we are creating music together. He's arranging and producing it. And we are thinking about an audience of all ages, right? And delivering really high quality, high production level music to even to young children. And so I think about some of like the role of recurrence, for example, and predictability in the stimuli that we give to babies and young children. And I actually think that this is an area where the industry gets it wrong, because sometimes, you can listen to what is typically provided for young listeners and find that it's so deconstructed and devoid of musical complexity that it becomes almost insultingly infantilized. And so one of the things that we work together on is how do we sort of narrow in on those musical elements that we do want to repeat and to be a signature and to be felt and to be culturally relevant and to have some, structural musical significance, while also allowing for people to push their boundaries and grow a little, right? For their ears to become a little more refined, to be able to handle a little bit more complexity and rhythmic structure, for example. And so that's just something, it's really interesting to hear this group talking about it from the science standpoint, evolutionary standpoint, research, and also the music production side.
Well, it's been so lovely having you all here on with us, Jessica and Dante. Just thank you so much for sharing your amazing music with us all. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you so much for the invitation and for everything that you're doing for the zombie apocalypse.
Yeah. And Jake, thank you for sharing your work with us as well. Greg,
Anytime.
Thank you for joining us too. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I can't wait to see Jake's reanimation device unveiled.
Yeah.
So.
That'll be the next show.
Yeah.
So not ours, unfortunately. Well, we have a really special treat for our next segment. We have Kristy Roschke here with us. Kristy is the managing director of the News Co-Lab at ASU at the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication. Kristy, welcome. Oh, Kristy.
Look, she's already
She's already here.
I surprised you.
Here. You did. So, Kristy, you run the News Co-Lab at ASU. Tell us, what is the News Co-Lab and what are you doing to fight the problem of zombification in the world today?
Sure. Yeah, happy to. So I'm over at the journalism school at ASU, and the News Co-Lab really is kind of a collaborative lab related to all issues of media literacy. So that talks about all the different ways that we consume, access and engage with media. And so I've been so interested in this conversation you've been having around music, but I think it very much relates to how we interact with all types of information, right? And one thing that Dante said earlier about zoning out but staying present. So we do a lot of zoning out when we're looking at media. We're scrolling our phones, we're looking at Twitter. It's just kind of washing over us. Very easy to zone out, but how do we do that but yet still be present about the information that we're taking in?
That's really interesting. So do you have some tips for us as we try to sort of fight the forces of zombification coming into our lives from our, perpetual scrolling on our phones and our email and our news that's always present for us? So how do we stay in the pocket or keep it in the pocket?
Yeah. Sometimes it is like just keeping your phone in your pocket, right? And like resisting the urge to just like get into that zone because it's so easy to stay in that place. I mean, I'm sure we've all sort of looked at our stats on our phone where it's like your usage has gone up 76% this week. And it's like never a good feeling, but then you're like, I don't really know how to do it differently. So part of it is like recognizing that we don't have to be dialed into that constant influx of information, and that maybe maybe it's better to set sort of appointment viewing like we had in the old days before the internet for our information consumption. But if we can't do that, because that takes a concerted effort, right? It is recognizing that first of all, that passive zoning really isn't all that passive. We are taking in information, even though it might feel like we're not, because we're just kind of mindlessly looking at things, but we are sort of implicitly reacting to things. So we need to be mindful of that, first of all, that nothing is totally passive. And then I think the second tip is that when we're kind of taken out of that zone for some reason, it's because it's triggered some sort of emotional response. And usually that emotional response is not like love and laughter. It's more like fear, anger, pain, something like that. And so knowing that that's what's taken us out of this zombie mindset, how are we going to react to that? And I think we can all agree that it's probably never the best idea to react, like knee-jerk react to fear, anger, pain. So maybe slow down a bit. Don't respond right away.
Chasing you, right?
Well, okay, right, sure. I mean, yes, and that's right. It's a biological sort of evolutionary impulse to like want to react in those moments.
Sure.
But yes, if you're not in actual danger, you're more maybe like in existential danger or information danger. It's okay to stop and respond in a more measured way. So I think that's like step one. And then also to kind of know that we can't it's just not a healthy way to be angry about everything. So maybe we should let more things wash over ourselves.
But it's fun. It's really fun.
It can be for sure. Another thing I heard people say, but I think something that someone else said earlier too, I don't remember if it was Jake or Greg, but that balance between chaos and predictability. What we've seen in media, I think, is that the chaos has risen to levels that it's become predictable.
Sure.
So it's almost like that we don't react to most things, even though we should feel like, oh, this doesn't seem right, but it's so predictable. They're just like, so it's very interesting, combination of things. But mostly I think be mindful of the why. Why are we paying attention to the things we stop to pay attention to? What is it doing to us? So that we can respond in a way that maybe is more constructive than destructive.
Yeah. Great. And so what can students do if they're interested in learning more about this, taking classes, getting educated themselves sort of about what media literacy is?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So we have a bunch of classes at the Cronkite School that any ASU students can take online. So we have a digital media literacy degree program that's open to all. There's a minor associated with that as well. So if you're a student at ASU, great news. There's lots of cool classes we teach that students can be a part of. We also have a free online class called Media Active that anyone can take that teaches some of these tips and techniques. It's really aimed for people who aren't in university or at school, right? So they can take this class for free. And then, we of course contribute to that information deluge by being all over social media and things. And then, we get students involved in creating media across the university as well. So creating media is an excellent way to become more media literate because you having a better understanding of that process helps you understand the messages that people are delivering to you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Could I ask a quick question?
Please.
So, because you're talking about people making media, so do you have ways of teaching students as well as sort of interpreting what they're reading, but to make sure what they're putting out there is
Absolutely.
beneficial?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So part of, sort of our whole, ethos behind teaching this is that, being active in media is both, a consumption and use, but also a creation activity. And there's a spectrum of that, right? Because, in some levels, even just liking someone's tweet could be considered creating. You're sort of adding your stamp to something. But yes, to answer your question, we teach a lot of, specific to creation, whether it's podcasting or video production, or we do a lot of blogging, which feels like a throwback to, early aughts or something, but it's, still a very relevant form of when you don't have a professional platform, you can be a media creator online. So we do a lot of blogging and that often involves multimedia. So for sure, having students talk about their media use and understanding why messages are impacting them the way that they are and why they're creating messages in certain ways is a really meta activity to better understand what's going on.
Great. Thank
Well,
you so much,
yeah.
Kristy. We really appreciate you sharing your brains with us today.
Very glad to be here. Shall I go out this door?
You can go out whichever door you want. Thank you.
Thanks
Thank you. Thank you. Well, we're going to end things as we always do with an amazing wrap up
All
from
right.
our resident musician. Baba
so
Brinkman.
I just real quick.
Oh, yes.
You could come in, Baba. I just wanted
Come
to
on
say,
in, Baba.
we had a workshop yesterday where we learned how to
Hi.
rap, and so
Great
now I need to listen to my body. So while you do your rap, I'm gonna go use the bathroom.
Oh, okay.
Oh, wow.
That is listening to your body to the max. Great conversation. Of course, I was entranced and entrained because I get into the polyrhythms as well with the lyrics. And, that triplet thing is something we rappers do lyrically by trying to put words in between beats and things like that. So I had fun writing this one.
Awesome.
It's meta.
It's meta.
It's
Amazing.
Yeah. Should I dive right in?
I think, yeah, you should dive right in.
Okay, here we go. Got my microphone. Let's see, make sure this beat comes through nice. A little quiet. Oh, there it is. Yeah. Okay, here we go. This is a zombie entrainment rap. In the apocalyptic end times, we parlay impossible conversations, keep the zombies at bay so they can't make a snack out of our brains. We don't sing Kumbaya, we sing Somali with Dante Pope. We sing Somali with the polyrhythm. We triple all day. We're finding the beat, it's kind of tricky. Just ask Dave when he's gone. Rhythm controls your brain. Somali, zombie music and rhythm. It doesn't have to be scary. Like zombie, I'm a cranberry zombie music. Put us all under a wild spell. Follow the talk, I'm with you, Liz. More cowbell. Follow the talk. The rhythm patterns, Dante mastered them at home when he was watching Family Matters. Me too, Dante. It's how I got my sweet weird flow. People call me the rap version of Steve Urkel. And this is the nerd show. And the zombies are coming, so we need to get the rhythmic entrainment from zombie drumming with a thriller, a tension builder, a hypnotic killer. Get the polyrhythmic syncopation from Jessica Phillips-Silver. If you ask me a 4/4 beat, that's just dope. I'm binary on my 2 feet when I flow. I'm so bipedal, DC go-go. No better musical genre for busting loose with the African drums. Plus you can play it on buckets too with that junkyard sound where the drums just never stop. I wish Dante was here to drum to this hip-hop. From the pocket to the socket, I'm kind of a zombie when I rock it. It's not a snare drum, that's the sound of my bones crunching, my joints popping, my lips talking. The zombie rhythm has got me adrenaline wide awake, and I ain't even sipping the coffee with the news poll, man. Yeah, we keep it in the pocket when engaging with today's media forms with Kristy Roschke. The visual lead made Greg physically offbeat. So listen to the head, the audio like a cockatoo that's head nodding. That's how we beat the zombies. We bring together this army with the rhythm of the post-apocalyptic go-go party. So yo, it's the end times, Yeah, that means we parlay impossible conversations to keep the zombies at bay so they can't make a snack out of our brains. We don't sing Kumbaya, we sing Somali with Dante Pope. We sing Somali with the polyrhythm. We triple it all day. Finding the beat is a bit tricky. Y'all can ask Dave. Rhythm controls your brain. Somali. So put your delicious brains in. We can all laugh together. Feel that physical entrainment, speed pattern matching. Investigate with science in the triadic conversation of Athena, Dave, and Greg Bryant. So never break the pattern. I'm calmer than Lake Placid. When you take acid, lay back and listen to Jake Patten. And just watch the numbers coalesce and turn into palaces. Analyzed under Jake Patten's recurrent analysis. I'm a bird when I'm rapping this mating call to the world. A European starling singing I'm a Barbie girl on TikTok. Watch out, cause if a zombie can pick locks, I'm about to be a bird with its wings getting ripped off. This is hip hop, a mating call from top to bottom. I'll save you this speculation. Listen, the signal is costly. Kristy Roschke can analyze its potential for marketing. and how likely it is to spread digital and virally. It's obviously high in Jake's recurrent signal function, but this is not a rap created for major popular consumption. It's created for y'all, the people that know that what I'm talking about, because you're in this podcast and you're watching it right now in the end times, that means we parlay impossible conversations to keep the zombies at bay so they can't make a snack out of our brains. We don't sing Kumbaya, we sing So Male with Dante Pope. We sing So Male with the polyrhythm, we triple it all day. Finding the beat is a bit tricky, y'all can ask Dave when the rhythm controls your brain. So Male, we sing So Male.
Thanks for bringing it all back for us. Amazing.
Always a pleasure, and I get to do this one more time, right?
Yeah.
During this year's ZAM. So.
Exactly. We have one more episode of Undead Live this afternoon. Baba, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. My pleasure. Great. Love the show. Thank you, guys.
And thank you, all of you, for being with us here for this edition of Undead Live on Channel Z. Remember, the best way to protect your brains in the zombie apocalypse is to share them. See you next time on Undead Live, where we have the apocalypse covered.
And if the whole world says that we're crazy,